"Millie," Mother whispered as I brandished the freshly cleaned butcher knife. "If your father catches you playing with that, he'll skin you alive." Funny, she didn't seem the least bit relieved when I showed her what was left of Father. Written by Greg in Nashville. And if you have a 2-sentence horror story you'd like me to read on the podcast, comment here on Spotify or YouTube. Hello, I'm Blair Bathory, and this is the Something Scary podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Whether this is your first time or you're one of the brave souls who join us every week. Some call it the witching hour, that deathly time that creeps up after midnight, between 3 and 4 a.m., when the world holds its breath. Some say it's when spiritual energy peaks, a mockery of the holy trinity at 3:33 a.m., making it ripe for unholy rituals and ghostly visitations. So if you wake up suddenly around then, you're not alone. Something might have stirred you, or someone. First, the dead eat, followed by it's in the walls. Finally, in our last story, too late to turn back. And thanks again for following my journey in Cannes. I really appreciate everybody that watched on the live and kept engaged. I really appreciate it. It was a big opportunity for me, and I'm really excited to see what happens next. So, want to hear something scary? Dead awake. The dead don't need to eat, but sometimes they do anyway. Like this story inspired by Lego Boy, based on a Hong Kong urban legend in honor of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It happened in December of 1989. Late one night, a restaurant in Kowloon received a call for delivery. The customer ordered 4 portions of beef chow fun. That amount wasn't unusual, maybe a late-night group of mahjong players or shift workers needing dinner. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The kitchen rushed the order, and soon the delivery man set out with the bags of steaming food. The address led them to an aging apartment complex tucked behind a wet market. When he reached the unit, he knocked once. Then again, no answer. He called out, louder this time, and pounded harder. After a long minute, the door creaked open, just an inch. A hand, pale and slow, slid cash through the narrow gap. The customer's voice came through next, quiet and raspy. No face, no eye contact. "Leave it by the door." Just the instructions and a lingering silence. The delivery man hesitated. Something felt strange. But the money was there, and the food was hot. He set the bag down and left without another word. Back at the restaurant, the night wrapped up as usual. The boss counted the earnings before closing, verifying that everything matched the night's orders. But as he sorted through the bills, something stopped him cold. Mixed among the crisp Hong Kong banknotes was a piece of ghost money. Josh paper traditionally burned for the dead to spend in the afterlife. It had the texture of cheap tissue and bore the face of the Jade Emperor. The boss frowned. Maybe one of the kitchen boys was playing a stupid prank. He gathered his staff and asked who'd slipped the funeral offering into the till, but none of them confessed. They looked just as confused as he felt, unwilling to make a scene. He tossed the ghost money aside and let it go. The next night, the phone rang again. Same order, same voice. 4 portions of beef chow fun. The delivery man reluctantly returned to the same apartment. The exact scenario repeated. No answer at first, then a sliver of a door opening, money sliding out, the whisper of, "Leave it there." This time, the delivery man studied cash more carefully. Real currency. Fresh bills. He even held it under a streetlight before returning it to the restaurant. But when the boss counted the money that night, another piece of Josh paper stared up at him. Now he was angry. He called his staff again, demanded to know what was tampering with the register. But the delivery man swore that what he'd been handed was real money. The bills were crisp. He even remembered the serial number starting with J5. The boss didn't believe in ghosts, but he wasn't stupid. Something was wrong. He made a decision. The next night, if that customer called again, he would deliver the food himself. And sure enough, the call came. Same order, same voice. The boss packed the food himself and went out into the cold night. When he reached the apartment, he tried to peek through the crack in the door. He could barely make out shadows, movement behind the frosted glass. But still, no one let him in. Just the same slow slide of money, the same raspy voice. "Leave it." He did, but not before inspecting the bills carefully. This time, he set the money aside in a separate envelope and tucked it into his coat pocket, away from the rest of the restaurant's earnings. When the night ended, he took the envelope out and examined the contents again. The money had changed. The Hong Kong currency was gone, replaced with more ghost money, crinkled and faded, with ash smudges on the corners. He hadn't taken his eyes off of it all night. Now truly disturbed, the boss went to the police. The authorities accompanied him to the apartment the next morning. They knocked several times, no answer. One officer noted a foul smell drifting from the hallway. Eventually, they forced the door open. Inside, 4 corpses lay sprawled across the living room floor. Each was in a different stage of decomposition. The air was thick with rot. Mahjong tiles were still arranged on the table, and a half-eaten meal, beef chow fun, sat cold nearby. The forensic team arrived quickly. Initial estimates put the time of death at over a week earlier, but something didn't add up. The bodies had undigested food in their stomachs that was no more than 2 days old. Dead people don't eat. It got stranger. The ghost money the boss had brought in, it bore fingerprints from multiple people. The boss, the delivery man, and somehow the 4 deceased individuals. The restaurant's phone records confirmed the calls, but the apartment's line had been disconnected for over 10 days. There was no sign of an outgoing or incoming call from that unit. Neighbors were stunned. None of them suspected anything was wrong. They swore they heard the clack and shuffle of mahjong tiles well into the night, every night. But they never heard any voices, no laughter, no footsteps, just the mechanical rhythm of tiles being played by invisible hands. Word spread fast. The police downplayed it, claiming it was likely a mix-up in time of death or evidence contamination. But the press got hold of it, and soon headlines screamed of ghost delivery on Temple Street and dead mahjong player while waiting for chow fun. The restaurant shut down a month later. No one wanted to eat there anymore, not after what happened. The delivery man quit, moved to Canada, and refused to speak of it again. But in Hong Kong, the story lives on. Some say the souls of those 4 gamblers couldn't let go of the living world, not until they settled their last game. Others say the boss made a deal without knowing it, and the Josh paper was a payment meant not for food, but passage. Because the dead still get hungry, and sometimes they still remember your number. Would you deliver to the same address if you knew no one inside was alive? Like I mentioned at the top of this podcast, we are excited by the response of our 2-sentence horror story challenge. We decided last month during our weekly meeting that we should start doing some of these, and they are really fun. And our head writer just knocked out one that day and lit the fuse. And now we're getting lots of them from all of you. To those of you who want to send one in, send it to me at SomethingScary@snarled.com, or you can drop them in the comments on Spotify or YouTube. What makes you scared? It's something I always think about. Is it the location, the sounds, the smells, or the time of day? Do scary things happen when you are alone or with someone else? For me, it's the unknown and things that go bump in the night that we don't really know what it is. So I'm always thinking, what's lurking in the shadows? Sometimes what's left behind wants you to stay. Like in this story inspired by our listeners who are most terrified of 3:30 a.m. The house was quiet, but not comfortably so. More like the hush before a confession. Veda Alvarez stood in the hallway of her late grandparents' home, where the air felt wet, like someone had just been breathing there, and stopped when she entered. Her fingers grazed the floral wallpaper with pineapples that had yellowed with time. She told herself she was only there to save money. 1 year, maybe less, just enough to rebuild her savings and get back to the city. But the house seemed to know she wasn't staying, and it didn't like that. The third night was when the sleep stopped feeling restful. She woke in the dark, unsure why, until she glanced at the clock. 3:30 a.m. The red digits glowed like an accusation. Her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. No ringtone, just vibration. An incoming call. The number was blank. No area code, no contact info. Just zeros. Veda didn't answer, didn't even touch the phone. In the morning, the call was gone. No record of it. But her phone battery was drained, and the screen was smudged with fingerprints she hadn't left. Just a faint unease that clung to her skin like humidity. Veda had never been superstitious. She'd grown up in Texas, spent most summers with her abuela in that very house, surrounded by rosaries, prayer candles, and whispered prayers that always sounded more like mornings. But she left that all behind. College, career, logic. Still, when the call came again, same time, same number, she answered. There was no voice at first, just breathing, deep weight, too close. Then, as if dragged through static,
"I found you."
She hung up. The phone slipped from her hands, hit the carpet with a muffled thud. That morning, she searched. 3:30 a.m., call unknown, number breathing. The forums were buried deep, their designs dated and patched together. One thread mentioned a series of calls that started the same way, always 3:30, always breathing, always ending with that phrase.
"I found you."
A woman in one post had replied, "They keep calling until you speak back, until you say something personal." The thread's original poster hadn't logged in for years. Their profile read, "Last active, unknown." The next night, Veda turned off the Wi-Fi. She powered down the phone and left it on the kitchen counter. At 3:30 a.m., the house phone rang. There was no reason it should work. Her grandmother hadn't used it in years. The cord was frayed, the provider contact long canceled. Still, it rang once, twice, a third time. She didn't answer. On the fourth, it stopped. Silence returned, and then something stranger. A knock. But not on the front door. On her second-floor bedroom window. No ledge, no tree nearby, just open air. And something pressing gently against the glass, as though testing it. Veda froze. The knock came again, calm, rhythmic, as though whatever was out there knew she was awake. She didn't look. She didn't move. The next day, she went into the attic. She hadn't planned to. Something just pulled her there, among the dusty boxes and forgotten linens. She found an envelope marked Ishmael. Inside was a black and white photo of a boy with pale eyes, standing in front of the house. He looked about 13. On the back, in her grandmother's looping script, "He sleepwalks sometimes." Behind him, in the attic window above, a shape was barely visible. When she looked again, it wasn't there. Veda hadn't heard of him. When she asked her mother, the response was clipped. "Ishmael was my uncle," her mother said. "Disappeared when he was a kid. They thought he ran off. Your grandmother always said he was taken." "By who?" Her mother hesitated. "She never said. Just warned us, if you hear them at night, don't answer." The calls became nightly, even when the phone was off, even with no power. Sometimes it was the ring, other times a voice from the dark corners of the room. Once again it spoke through the vents. Each time the message was the same.
"I found you."
Veda started sleeping with salt at her windows, a circle of chalk around her bed, old protections, old fears. The house didn't care. One night, the lights went out exactly 3:30. No flicker, just darkness. Her phone, still on the kitchen counter, lit up by itself. There was a photo displayed, blurry, grainy, a boy standing at her bedroom door, pale eyes, bare feet. Then the door creaked open. The next morning, she called her cousin Mateo, a carpenter, asked him to reseal the attic, reinforce the windows, anything to make the house forget her. He agreed, but paused before hanging up. Tia always said the house was paper thin, he said, like the veil here never closed properly. Veda didn't ask what that meant. She knew. The final night, she lit every candle she could find, set mirrors in every room, placed iron nails on the windowsills. She sat in bed and waited. She wouldn't sleep, wouldn't blink. At 3:29, Veda swore the mirror was breathing, fog blooming and vanishing on the glass. At 3:30, it cracked down the center, like something trying to come through. Her phone lit up, screen fractured but working. A voicemail played without her touching it. It was breathing again. But this time, a second voice whispered beneath it, not to her, but about her.
She knows now. She saw me. She said my name.
Veda pressed the phone to her ear. "Who are you?" she whispered. A long pause. Then softly,
You called me.
she dropped the phone. It landed screen up. The call was still live. She stared, and for a moment, in the reflection on the cracked screen, she wasn't alone. When the police arrived 2 days later, the house was quiet. No signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle. Just a single unlocked door to the attic, its hinges creaking softly in the wind. Veda's phone sat on the nightstand. One missed call, 3:30 a.m. There was a voicemail, 2 seconds long, breathing. Then,
Another one will answer.
what if the memories that are chasing you, haunting you, aren't just memories, but something that's alive? Now, an email straight from a listener, Ethan. Hello, my name is Ethan. I have a story that happened to my siblings, Nathan, my twin brother, Natalia, our big sister, Levi, our baby brother, and me. It all started when I was 6 years old. We lived in Galveston in a quiet suburban neighborhood. There was a park next to our house and a lake where we went crabbing. It seemed like the perfect place to grow up. That changed the night Nathan woke up screaming. I thought it was for no reason until he told us there was an animal head floating around him and something trying to rip his blanket off. My mom ran in thinking it was a nightmare, but Nathan swore it was real. I didn't believe him either, but I let him sleep in my bed anyway. A few nights later, I woke up to a strange blue light glowing on the wall. When I turned around, I saw a girl, about my age, glowing and floating in the air like she was lying down. Something about her felt calm. But I was still scared. I've always been afraid of things I couldn't explain. I forced myself to sleep with that eerie blue light still glowing on the wall. In the morning, I told Nathan what I saw, and he believed me immediately. That night, we both slept on the top bunk, too scared to fall asleep. We pulled the blanket over us, but eventually drifted off. We shouldn't have. Not long after, we woke up to something moving on top of the blanket. We saw small footprints, clear as day, pressing down on the covers. We yanked them down to see what it was, but nothing was there. When we told our mom, she said it was probably spirits coming through our windows since we didn't have any blinds. The scariest thing happened not long after that. One night, Nathan and I were woken up by Levi screaming. We looked over and saw a tall shadow of a woman with slicked back hair pulling him by the feet. He was kicking and crying, half of his body lifted off the bed. The second our mom walked in, the shadow disappeared. But we know what we saw. There were strange things too. Nathan once caught on camera going into the playroom, turning the TV to static, then falling asleep. He had no memory of it, and I remember waking up in the same room with no idea how I got there. We moved out a month later. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if we had stayed a little longer. Sometimes, It's not the place that's cursed, but the choice you make when you get there. It started with a dumb push notification. Warning, approaching an active spiritual site. Proceed with caution. Louis snorted. Another clout-chasing horror app. His cousin Mateo had sent it over last week with a skull emoji, and a bro try this out at night, LOL. Supposedly, it used GPS to detect Latin American legends, just like La Llorona, El Cuca, and of course, La Roja. That one stuck. The name curled around something in his memory, half-formed and sour. His abuela used to mutter it after too much wine, fingers twitching at her rosary. If you see her at the crossroads, don't stop, don't look, just keep driving. Louis had laughed then. Now he was alone. Halfway down a forgotten road outside Albuquerque, the city lights long behind him. The desert stretched wide and empty, too quiet for midnight. The sky was too big, the kind that made you feel like something could drop out of it and nobody would hear you scream. Another ping. You are near La Roja, crossroads ahead, do not stop. He turned the volume down and tried not to glance at the map, but the GPS had started acting weird, recalculating constantly, spinning him in loops. The delivery address kept changing coordinates. All roads led here. Then up ahead he saw it, a fork in the road. Old pavement, cracked and uneven, flaked by dead brush and rusted fencing. No lights, no signs, and in the center of the fork, a shape. Human, maybe, still as a scarecrow, wrapped in black, with hair so long it looked like it was being held down by gravity. Louis slowed without realizing. He blinked. She vanished. Then something brushed his window. Too fast to see, too real to ignore. He flinched back. She was there, outside, inches from him. He couldn't see her face, but he felt her watching, felt his stomach drop, cold fingers tugged behind his eyes. He hit the brakes. The car jerked sideways, tires biting gravel. When he looked again, gone. But then came the sound. Click. The backseat light turned on. She was inside. Louis scrambled out of the car, leaving the engine running, heart smashing against his ribs. He ran without direction, lungs aching, rocks biting through his sneakers. He didn't stop until he saw headlights, faint and flickering like a dying candle. An old man in a dusty Ford opened the passenger door without a word. Louis got in, shaking. Neither of them spoke. The radio hissed static. The dashboard smelled like cigarettes and dried flowers. The man dropped him off at a gas station 20 minutes later and drove away. Inside, Louis tried calling Mateo. The signal cut in and out, stretching each ring into a warped tone. When it finally connected, Mateo's voice came through tight, hoarse. Their mom had died. A stroke, out of nowhere, just after midnight. Louis hung up and leaned against the bathroom door, chest hollow. His fingers went numb. His abuela's warning came back in pieces. If you see her, someone you love will die. Don't stop. Don't look. He didn't dream for 2 nights. Then he started seeing her again. Not on the road, but in mirrors, reflections, behind bus windows, half seen in elevator glass. Always just behind him, always in black. Sleep felt like drowning. He went to a priest even though he hadn't been in church in years. The man listened without interrupting. When Louis finished, the priest rubbed a thumb across his lips and crossed himself. He didn't offer comfort, just a warning. You don't unsee her. Louis started avoiding roads after dark, didn't take shifts past 10, didn't even look at crosswalks too long. But it didn't matter. The signs came anyway. One night, while brushing his teeth, he looked up and saw 2 streetlights intersecting behind him in the mirror. His own bathroom had become a fork in the road. He dropped the toothbrush, didn't pick it up. The dream returned that night. He was standing at the fork again, but someone else was there now. Mateo, still, pale, eyes like static. She stood behind him, and for the first time, she lifted her face. It was monstrous. It was familiar. His mother's tired eyes, his abuela's sharp cheekbones, a face built from guilt, held too long in the body. Her mouth opened, but the sound was his own name, spoken like a prayer no one meant to say out loud. He woke up choking on air, skin damp, nails clawing at his own chest. 3 days later, Louis asked Mateo to meet him for a drive. He said he'd found the app again, said it was real this time, Mateo, being Mateo, said, "Bet," and showed up with a Monster Energy and a bag of Takis. Lewis drove, back out to the same stretch of road. Same cracked pavement, same dusty sky. He stopped at the fork, cut the engine, unbuckled his seatbelt. Mateo frowned. "What are you doing?" Lewis got out of the car. The air was dead still. Dry, heavy like heat lightning. He walked to the center of the crossroads and stood there, waited. She didn't appear this time, but she was there. He could feel her, like pressure behind his ribs, like grief curling a hand around her heart before it can break. Behind him, the passenger door opened. Mateo called out. Lewis didn't turn around. Have you ever felt washed at a stoplight with no one around? Did you feel like someone was in the car with you? Do you think it's possible spirits were lurking? Tell us your spooky stories by sending us an email at SomethingScary@snarled.com. This week's podcast stories were edited by Sarah Lukasiewicz, narration by Blair Bathory, audio edited and mixed by Fitz Harris, additional audio editing by Calvin Linderman, produced by Anna Villalobos, executive produced by Gail Gilman, music by Sapphire Sindalo and Calvin Linderman. If you have a story you'd like to submit, send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. Don't forget to watch the video version of Something Scary over at youtube.com/snarled. And if you'd like to support the show and everything we do at Snarled, join our Patreon at patreon.com/snarled. And as always, thanks for joining me this week for some scary stories. Let me know in the comments what you thought about each one and which was your favorite. And as always, comment below with a 2-sentence horror story if you got one. I'll see you next time. Sweet screams.